Happy New Year. It's the beginning of 2020. I think it's unique. You think back in the past, we think of 100 years ago, the roaring 20s, what they were like. Well, we are beginning the new roaring 20s. Isn't that exciting? To think what's going to come ahead, that we talk about this decade for years to come, and sometimes you think it's more like a moaning 20s, but it's going to be roaring. There's going to be some good stuff ahead. As we're looking at the beginning of this year, we want to share with you kind of a vision for the year, what we believe God has given us as goals that we're going to work towards and a focus that we're going to have as a church. And we began working on this last year. The elders gave me some time in May just to get away and just really seek God's face and say, God, what do you want for us? And I came back and worked on that and shared it with the elders. They spoke into it, that I shared it with the other pastors, and they spoke into it. And we've been continuing working on what we believe God is calling us, Harvester Christian Church, to really focus on for this year. And Gustavo, who leads our campus out in Troy, as well as Nokomis, really spoke into this a lot. And so over this week and next week, I want to share with you several things, exciting things ahead for us for the year of 2020. We kind of begin this. You step back and say, God, what do you want us to do? What is current? What do we need to speak into? Where are the hurts and pains of the people around us that we're trying to reach out to? And it doesn't take much to come up with some great, huge needs around us. We look at our country and we see that there is a lot of division among us politically, isn't there? And it's not just a little bit, it is a great, huge gulf. And it's full of emotion. The hatred between the political parties is just hard to fathom. But going back 20 years to think that we'd be in this place, and we have a president that many people absolutely love him and other people absolutely hate him, but it's not just I dislike him, it's a seething hatred that just keeps oozing out. We have this nomination that's coming up, so among their own parties, here we have these people that are vying for it that are just saying very mean-spirited things towards each other. It's fighting amongst us. There's examples put in front of us as far as where our politics are at. Between parties, it's there. It comes down between friends, between family. We're also, as a country, still divided racially. You think by now we should be working through this, but it's still a problem. There's fear, there's anger, and it comes out in so many different ways, and still St. Louis is a place where that is seated, it's there, and we like to think it's just inflamed by media. But in talking with many of you who've moved in from other parts of the country, you said, no, there's something really unique and different about the St. Louis metro area. It's there. Speaking with some leaders in Ferguson, we're going to be starting on relaunching a work there in a new campus this year, and talking with some leaders of that city, saying, how do you feel like things are compared to August of 2014? Have we come a long ways? And in some ways, things are better. One guy said, but it only would take one spark for the same thing to happen all over again, because the issues have not been yet resolved. It is so sad. It's time for the people of God to live out faith and love, and that's what's going to change it. Not any political decision, not a government decision, but when people truly give love and grace. Amen? And we're going to continue to speak to that issue as a church. And I'm excited about some things that are coming up here in a few weeks, and we'll share many of those next week. But how we can speak into and bring some pain, address the issues of pain with God's love that's going to be there. As a country, we see these horrible things happening, these mass shootings, and what happened last Sunday at the church in Texas, and the family celebrating Hanukkah the week before, being attacked in their homes, and there's this anger that keeps coming out in people. St. Louis made headlines on New Year's Day. First thing when I picked up my phone to look at the news of the day, it was national headlines, St. Louis, Missouri. It said 4 homicides in the very first 3 hours of the year. And how sad, and they've continued last week. There's problems, there's issues that are coming into it, there's drugs, there's addictions. There's so many things that are happening around us, and we say, whoa, we've got a lot of problems in our country and in our city, in our families, and it's scary, and we become overwhelmed with all the problems that are there. And I want to say I'm thankful for the team of men and women who volunteer and serve and making sure we have safety in our building and our security team, and they're well-trained. And I thank you for what you do for us. Can you express your thanks to them? They work hard for us. Thank you. I believe as a country, we just kind of keep walking away from God. We're walking away from his word. We're walking away from the teachings of Jesus. And there's so many people in America that say, oh, I'm a Christian. Oh, yeah, and a Christian means I'm a follower of the Christ, the Messiah. And if we're a follower of the Messiah, Jesus, then we should be following his teachings. But there's many people that wear the name of Christian, but they don't look and act and sound anything like Jesus. We say we value life, but we treat an unborn baby as just tissue and say it's to be discarded if it's unwanted. We value life, we say, but there's an increase in hatred towards Jews. And there's a hatred towards Muslims that sometimes is coming from people who say they're followers of Jesus. But it's not just a dislike, it's an anger and a hatred. And there's dislike towards Christians. We say we value life, but we treat those that practice a different lifestyle with contempt and anger. We say we value life, but people are struggling with addictions or mental illness are treated as cast-offs. And if we value life, it's all life. And understanding that everybody is created in the image of God. And we need to have God's love that's demonstrated towards the people around us. And are we as a people, are we seeking God and his word? Are we seeking the teachings of Jesus to say, I want to be more like you, Jesus? Or are we acting more like the world? And the anger and the fear, the hatred would not be a part of the life of Jesus, and it shouldn't be a part of the life of the followers of Jesus as well. Are we more concerned about God's word and Jesus' teaching, or our own opinions and my own thoughts and my own desires? As Christians, I'm afraid we look too much like the world with our hate and our anger and the things that we're posting, rather than are we posting the love and the teachings of Jesus and his grace. Now, that's all negative. And there's good stuff too, so I hope I don't thoroughly depress you, but just kind of look, this is our world. But you look on the other side, and we have this great, big, beautiful world we're part of, and I love the world we're in, and there's so many good things around us. There's beautiful things happening. There's restoration happening, there's hope, and there's love, and there's good relationships, and I love seeing people in recovery, how they're finding hope in life, and there's some great things that are happening around us. There's some great things happening with technology. I mean, my phone does more than I can imagine. My grandkids teach me more stuff about it. Technology is good. I could walk into our house, and all I have to do is just say, hey, Google, and I can ask any question in this little tiny box. It's a full encyclopedia. I don't even have to open it up. It just tells me any question I want. I can ask the news of the day. It tells me. I don't have to look at my phone. It can give me a full weather report. I mean, it's just amazing, the technology that's there. It's kind of fun. It's good. We have all these things around us. Their economy is good. It's better than it's been for a long time, and things are happening. And we have this little plastic card we carry in our wallets that we can buy anything that we want. And if we buy everything we want and it fills up, we can just go get another plastic card. And we can buy anything we want and anything we don't want. And I'm not saying that's good, but we can just buy and buy and buy. We got comfort. You know, Jean's got me a really nice lazy boy chair. I love my chair. It's just so nice to sit in, and she gave me these shoes I could wear around the house that have memory foam in them. It's just amazing. It's like having pillows for my feet. I mean, is that comfort or what? And the kids gave me this weighted blanket that you can put on. And it's just like, oh, you sit in your lazy boy with your pillows on your feet and a weighted blanket and a bowl of ice cream. I mean, life is just good, isn't it? And so we can look, yeah, okay, I got one applause today. All right. Life is awful and terrible, but life is good. And we look around and we say, well, how does all this work out? But you have to be careful, because sometimes we get so caught up in our comforts and the technology, all that stuff, we can say that's what everything is in life is all about. But there's two sides of this. Look at 1 John. Chapter 2, it says this: do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in them. Okay. That's kind of hard, because I do love some things in this world. But notice the comparison. It's loving the world and also talking about the love of the Father. Context is saying, when I love the world more than I love the Father, when I love the world and all the things and my goals, and that puts in front of what God's love is, then we have a problem. And when my love for the world and everything in it is greater than my love for Jesus, then it says God's love is actually not even in me. Continues on. Verse 16 says, for everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of the eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. So it's laid out the examples of how we do that. It says, the world and its desires pass away, but the man who does the will of God lives forever. When I'm craving the world, when my eyes are desiring this or that, when I'm doing that and that's my greatest desire more than my desire for God, then we have a problem. It reminds us that everything in this world, it's going to pass away. It's not going to last. It's going to shift. It's going to change. But God's love doesn't. And when you love God, you're doing his will, it says you live forever. Do you believe that? Do you believe in forever? And if we kind of lay this out, where's the world? Where's all the hatred? Where's all my love for the world? And where's my love for God? And what's going to last? God's going to last forever. How are we focused on that? Do we see God as the most important thing? And this year, what we hope to do is we're going to take week after week our life groups, and we're going to work how to raise our eyes up off this world and put our eyes and focusing on God in the direction that he has for us. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11 is a verse that says, if I can get to it here, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the hearts of men. So God created this beautiful world we live in. He says he's put eternity in your heart. It's there. Every one of us, whether you're saved or not, he just put it in you. And your desires, you're going to live. You want to live even beyond this world. I've been to a lot of funerals. And every single funeral I've been to, no matter what kind of a lifestyle that person lived, everybody's talking about what they're doing in heaven. Because we just believe there's got to be more than this. Now, there's some people who don't believe there's anything beyond this life, but the most part, we do because God has put it in our heart. It's something we desire. Last summer, Gene and I went to Alaska. We'd never been there before, and it was an anniversary trip. We did something special, and we got there, and seeing all those beautiful glaciers, and I wanted to go see a bear. If you're in Alaska, you got to see a bear, right? So we paid good money to go on a bear hunt. It didn't come with a guarantee, and it should have, because we didn't see no bears at all. One of the trails we on, the guide was pretty excited when we saw what the bear had left on the trail, but that was about as close as we got. So he took us to the stream, and the salmon, they were swimming upstream like crazy. And I thought, oh, good, we'll see a bear. He goes, oh, you're going to see a bear there. I said, oh, you always do. So we get there, and we watch all these salmon working like crazy to swim upstream. We saw a few bald eagles come and have their dinner and take them home, but no bears. We kept watching those salmon. We'd go to another stream, and it was incredible to see these salmon and think where they'd been throughout their whole life. But when they came back, they were trying to get back home. Why? Because God had wired them that way. So this is where you belong. This is what you need to do. And with each one of us, it is in your heart. God has wired you for eternity. And that's where we're going. So this year, we're going to focus on eternity. What does it mean? If that's where we're going, that's how God created us, that's our desire, then what does it mean? How should I live my life if that's my focus? Several years ago, we've talked about it before, Gene and I were involved in a really bad car accident. We were driving down the road in our car, and a truck came across the median and hit us head on. He was going really fast, so he just smashed us in our car. And it was a very serious accident. Came out with several fractures. I was in a wheelchair for a long time. And after I was able to get back out, I can't tell you how many times I heard the phrase, Doyle, you are so lucky to be alive. Now, I know what they meant was that we were this close to death, and we really were, so we're fortunate to be alive, but I heard it from so many Christians, I kept thinking, why are they saying you're so lucky to be alive? I mean, alternative was death, and do they all think I'm going to hell? Is that why they're glad I'm alive? I mean, that's what it almost sounds like, and I don't think they meant, I really believe when you said that, you just meant, Doyle, you were this close to being dead, and that's true. But we need to think about, okay, what happens when we die? If eternity is real, if heaven is real, then is that really a horrible outcome that this life is so much better than that? Now, we're created to live, and we need to live every day for the glory of God. But what is this about death and hell and heaven? And we say we're saved, we're going to be in heaven. Do we think about that? One of the things that after I was finally able to get back in the car again and drive, it was months. I remember sitting in the car, ready to drive, and thinking, whoa, it only takes one crazy guy out there to make a mistake, and it's all over again. And it was real scary for me. And I did that for a long time. Every time I get in the car to start to drive, I would pray and say, okay, God, if today's the day I see you, I'm going to see you today. It was kind of a checklist because life is fragile. And it can change in a moment. It can be a health, or it can just be an accident, someone making a poor decision and our life is over. And is it something that we desire? Because I began thinking, and again, I was kind of weird on it for a long time, but I had a lot of time thinking about, wow, okay, I'm getting in the car, I could see Jesus today. That's kind of cool. But it also gives you a little checklist. And it was actually a good way to live life, to think about life is fragile, where is it going to be? But yet we hang on to life like crazy. Heard Chris DeWalt speak one time, and he spoke, and he said this one phrase. I was still in a wheelchair, and I was puzzled by all this. And he said, we spend more time praying saints out of heaven than sinners out of hell. And think about it, we're praying for great Aunt Mabel, who's 115 and so feeble, and God, just keep her alive and keep her alive. It's like, why? What's the worst alternative? She could be in heaven? And how concerned are we for our friends, our family members who don't know Jesus? Because eternity is real for them too. I think we need to get our eyes and focus on heaven and eternity. What's it like? What does this mean? One of the books, actually Susan Reeves told me about it, and we've got it down in the bookstore. It's by John Ortberg on Eternity is Now in Session. And I love that book. It's saying eternity begins right now, not after we die. It's how God created us. You're created to live with him in heaven. And it's a great book. I encourage you to kind of get it. Now, what are we going to live with this? How are we going to break this out? And I believe there's 4 steps that we're going to really focus on this year. And I heard Dudley Rutherford, a friend, share about this years back, and I thought it was so good. It just really stuck with me, and I want to share those with you today. First one is we want to make sure we get a proper perspective. A proper perspective on life. What is this life, and how has God set it up for us to live? James chapter 4, verse 14 says, why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. In the grand scope of things, the generations that come, when we come into this life, he says, your life is like a mist. It's here and then it's gone. It doesn't last very long at all in the grand scope of things. So what happens with this? Well, it says it's gone. You don't know what tomorrow holds. A song that was part of our wedding, just one simple phrase is, we don't know what tomorrow holds, but we know who holds tomorrow. I don't know what's coming, but God's above this and God's beyond this. So it's important for us to get a proper perspective, understanding that God is there. And God's got a purpose, plan much greater than us. And how does he see the world around us? Perhaps you heard about the guy who went to the doctor and he wasn't feeling well and got some tests, and a couple days later he got a call from the doctor's office and said, you need to get in here like today. We got to talk to you. So he goes to the doctor and he goes, doctor, what's wrong? He goes, well, I've got some bad news. I got really bad news. He goes, okay, what's the bad news? He goes, the bad news is you only have 24 hours to live. And they goes, oh, no, there's nothing wrong. He goes, nope, 24 hours to live. That's what the tests say. And the guy goes, oh, there's so much I got to say and I got to do, and I don't know what to do. How is this going to work? He goes, well, that's the bad news. What's the really bad news? And the doctor said, I was supposed to tell you that yesterday. You know, life is fragile. And we don't know how long we've got. We like to think we've got a really, really long time, but it could change in a heartbeat. It can switch around, and we need to live life enjoying it and planning for this full life of how we're going to serve God, but also understanding today is today, and how am I going to live today for God? So many times we get so caught up in all the problems and the issues around, and we're so overwhelmed by all this stuff, and we're thinking, God, what am I going to do with all this stuff? And I love it when you get on an airplane on one of those drizzly, miserable days. It's cloudy and just cold, and just think, haven't seen the sun in days. You get on a plane, it takes off and flies and flies. It goes through the cloud cover. You get above the cloud cover about 35,000 feet, and the sun's out. It's a beautiful blue skies. And life looks totally different from that perspective than down below. And you keep flying, and the clouds break up, and you look down, and the ground just looks like a patchwork quilt, all laid out. You think all those problems that were so overwhelming. If we just kind of back off and look at things differently, especially looking at it from God's perspective, how does life look from his viewpoint? 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 18 says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. So instead of just zeroing in on all the problems, instead of watching and feasting your news on the hatred that you see going back and forth and the mean spirits are going to be there, instead of spewing that out of yourself, instead of focusing on those issues, saying, God, how can I see it from your viewpoint? How do you see this world, God? How do you see this year ahead of us? And how can we step in line with what God's perspective for us is? Instead of being so caught up in your bank account and in your career and students, what classes you're going to take and what path you're going to choose and my job advancement, and that's the focus of everything, can we just back off and say, God, how do you see all of these things in front of me? So not only do we get a proper perspective, but we also need to set our correct priorities. To set these priorities saying, God, what do you desire from me? Because if our perspective is wrong, then our priorities are going to be wrong. If we can get our perspective right from God's viewpoint, then our priorities are going to fall in with him too. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1 says, since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. Since Jesus is there, he's ruling, and he's ruling over your life. You're giving yourself to him. Get your heart up where it should be, saying, God, I want my heart to be like yours. I want to love like yours, not hate and be full of anger and full of fear like the rest of the world. But put priorities where God has them. And I put in my mind, I'm going to start thinking, God, what do you desire for my life? What is your direction for me to follow? And start looking and living the way he has for us. Saying, God, this is what's going to be. Instead of looking at bank account and goals and saying, this is the most important thing in life, saying, God, your direction is the most important thing in life. Third area is just to know your purpose. What is your purpose in life? We're driven by all kinds of demands and pressures and expectations, and work puts upon you and school puts upon you that I got to do this, I got to get this done, and relationships put in there, and school and family and bills and push. We got to get all this stuff done, and we're saying, this is my purpose. I just got to work through all those things. But do you ever stop and sit back and say, God, what is your purpose? Why am I here? I'm doing all this stuff. Many of us so good, but all the pressure I'm under. God, what is the real meaning of life? What is the meaning of my life? Understanding that every person in here has a purpose for your life from God. You're created in the image of God. God has given a life to you as his gift. He's breathed into you life, and there's something in front of you that you need to do. And he's got a plan and a purpose for you. We did our whole Christmas series about how God created and designed, and sometimes it works through multiple generations for his purpose to come about, but it does. And we are one part of God's purpose and grace being laid out for us. 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 9 says, Jesus, who has saved us and called us to a holy life, not because of anything that we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. So you're called by the purpose of God. You've been given his grace. He's put something in your life that says you need to serve him and honor him. A verse we've used often around here, Matthew 6:33, the words of Jesus. Would you read this aloud with me? It says, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Do you do that? Do you seek God's purpose for your life? Saying, God, what do you desire from me? When you're praying, you're saying, God, I want your will to be done in my life. I want to serve you. Are you praying daily and saying, God, what is your direction for my life? How can I honor you? You're saying, God, which classes should I take? Which jobs should I take? Where should I go? God, what is your purpose? What is your ultimate desire in my life? And we can make money, and it's great to make money. It's good. But are you saying I'm making money for the kingdom of God and what God's called me to, or am I trying to build up my own kingdom? Do I see purpose that God's laid in front of me? And then the fourth area is that we need to follow God's plan. What is God's plan for your life? God has a purpose for your life, and God has a plan for your life. He's given you gifts. He's given you ability. He's given you a mind, but he wants you to use it for his glory and to set him up in a way that his will would be done, his purpose be done in your life. That plan. Another verse we use often, and I hope everyone in this room can memorize this verse from Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Would you read it with me? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. We say, God, I acknowledge you in every area of my life, and I'm asking you to give me your direction. Last week, Ben preached and he shared again from Matthew 28 that God has called us to make disciples and baptize them and teach them to obey all those things, be followers of his. That's God's call he put on your life. So you got all these things going on in your life. You got your work, you got your school, you got your family, you got relationships. You see, ultimately, God's plan is that you're going to use whatever area you're in to be an example of Jesus, that you're going to make disciples. You're going to lead people to him. And that doesn't come about by spewing hatred and anger and fear. It comes about by living as Jesus and spreading that out there, that people can see God working in your life. There's an Old Testament character named Jonah. And Jonah was given a job by God, a plan saying, Jonah, you go to this great city of Nineveh and you share the gospel. And Jonah didn't want to go because he didn't like those people in Nineveh. He didn't want them to be saved. He was pretty angry at them. And so he went the opposite direction, and God sent a storm to come upon him. He was swallowed by that great fish and spit him out, and finally he got things together. And you see, Jonah had the wrong perspective of life and rights and wrongs and who was good and who was bad. And Jonah had the wrong priorities completely. And he didn't understand God's purpose in his life, and he certainly didn't have God's plan. But God got his attention, turned his direction around, and used him to do some incredible things. As far as God's plan in your life, God's got a plan for you. And if you're going the wrong direction, your perspective's wrong, you're stepping out of the blessings of God. And I want to enter in 2020 under God's blessing, and I want the whole church to be able to say, God, I want to see your perspective, not only in this world, but for my life and where I'm going to go. Next week, we're going to spend some time, we're going to talk about how are we going to live this out as a church and talk about some things we're going to be doing over the next several months and leading into this and how we're going to do this at this campus and also at our campus in Troy, Missouri, and also the new church we're going to start in Ferguson, Missouri. And how are we going to live this out? What's God called for us? And then we're going to take a few weeks just to talk about what is eternity, what's it look like. We're going to talk about what happens when you die. When a person dies, what happens in those moments? How does the Bible say what transpires in? And what's heaven like? You know, how you get to heaven. Not everybody's going to go there, Jesus said. So what is it? And how do we get there? And what is hell like? We can't talk about heaven without talking about hell. And what is this thing of hell and around us? And living in the future starts now. So heaven, hell, and here. We're going to take a look at that and try to understand what does the Bible say and how should that change our perspective and our priorities in life. I want you to understand this is more than a theme. This is going to be an attitude of our heart. That if we can take our eyes off the world and put them on God. So at the end of this year, when we look back at 2020, hopefully we'll be able to say as a church, we're focusing on God. And that's changed our focus of the whole world around us. Our goal is that we'll have this eternal focus, the right perspective and the correct priorities. And understand, everybody in this room, what your purpose in life is and what God's plan is for you. Psalms 102 says this, verse 25. In the beginning, you ever heard that phrase before? In the beginning, we have in Genesis 1:1. We just took a look at it through December and John 1:1. In the beginning, God, you laid the foundations of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. We know that's true. God created, designed all of this. He's created and designed you. And then verse 26, talking about the world as creation, they will perish, but you, God, remain. They will all wear out like a garment, like clothing, and you will change them, and they will be discarded. He says, all this world around us, all this stuff, it's just going to wear out like an old piece of clothes, like an old pair of blue jeans. It's just going to be all worn out, full of holes. There's nothing going to be left in them, although some of you buy new blue jeans that are already all worn out, don't you? So maybe an old pair of shoes, old pair of running shoes. They're just going to be worn out. So this whole great, big, beautiful world, all that stuff, that huge bank account, your big titles, your careers, it's all just going to be discarded and thrown away. Verse 27, but you, God, remain the same, and your years will never end. Eternity is there. He's put in your heart. As a follower of Jesus, we understand his teachings, and that should change your direction, your focus, your attitudes. We shouldn't be people so overwhelmed by the world thinking, oh, nothing good's going to happen this year and what's going to be bad in the coming next, but saying, I know who holds this, and I know who's got it. We'll be focused on eternity, to have that proper perspective. Understanding, God, where are you in this? Now we're going to take some time for communion. And the time for communion at this part of our service, just so we can just stop and remember. So if you're going to serve communion, you can go back at this time. But if I'm going to have the right perspective and focus and direction and what's going to be, then he's come back to this point. Understanding that Jesus loves you so much that he gave his life for you so you could be saved. And in that being saved, that you have this hope of heaven that's so real, that you're going to be with him. But also understanding that you become a follower of Jesus. And he's the Lord of your life. And so saying, God, from this day forward, because of your love for me, I accept that forgiveness in my life. From this day forward, I'm going to follow you. And I'm going to be a follower of Jesus. That means his teachings, follower of his heart, his love, how he reaches towards others. And allow the Holy Spirit to soften that heart and change that mind. When people look at you, especially if you've been a follower of Jesus for a long time, then you should be different from others. I mean, you should. You know, students, you should be different from those at school who don't know Jesus. They should see people full of hope and understanding the problems of this world, but making some wise decisions because you're a follower of Jesus, and he's the supreme leader of everything. At your work, and they should see a person that's focused on doing good and spreading the love of God and doing the very best job you can, succeeding and doing well, but not from a selfish standpoint, but for the good of others, but certainly part of God's kingdom and lifting them up. And your relationships should be evident. That means some of the decisions I make about what classes I'm going to take or what school I go to are saying, God, what do you want from me? Because you're the Lord of my life. So those career paths you choose or jobs you choose are chosen not because of my own selfish desire, but saying, God, what do you desire? Those relationships are chosen because of God's direction in your life. See, communion is that time we just kind of get centered back and say, God, this is what's most important. And would you change my focus to be centered on you and your grace? We look at this next year, it's full of possibilities what God could do through you if we'd surrender to him. Father, thank you for grace, for your love, for salvation, and for hope. And we're in a broken world. It's beautiful on one side and full of hatred on the other. But God, you're greater than all of this. And Father, we pray that you'd work in our hearts. Help us to be followers of not just receiving forgiveness, but followers of your teaching and living in your grace and living in your love. Father, would you refresh us with your hope and your love? Would you change our perspective to be focused on you? It's in Jesus we ask.